Western France, 2 months after D-Day. Trapped on the wrong side of a burning tank, an Allied tank commander goes on a rampage to clear the approach to Fort Montburet. Out of ammo and defenseless, he turns back, but slides into a crater and lands at the doorstep of a German bunker occupied by enemy soldiers.
It defies any kind of rational explanation that 39 guys were going to surrender to a guy with a pistol.
They will put his bluff to the ultimate test. On June 6, 1944, Allied forces finally land troops in Normandy to open the Western Front. But Nazi fanatics and diehards continue to fight ruthlessly for survival. D-Day was a battle. The Allies still need to win the war. September 13th, 1944. Brest, France. Members of the American 121st Engineers Battalion worked to find a route through an area occupied by Nazi forces since 1940. Captain Sidney Smith and his men must clear 2 paths across the minefield to allow Allied tanks access to Fort Montburet, which guards the port of Brest. The Allies' siege of Brest began on August 7th. As Allied forces head northeast, Supreme Allied Commander General Dwight D. Eisenhower judges the capture of Brest to be of the highest priority.
There's a spectacular breakout from the Normandy beachhead. They're pursuing the German army, and they were running out of supplies very quickly. The port situation became critical.
The goal? To seize the port of Brest and the U-boat bunkers back from the Nazis.
Hitler told the German troops that were in the ports to hold at all costs. It was to the last bullet, to the last round, to the last life. These guys were going to hold out to the end.
Capture of the deep water port would allow men and materials to be unloaded directly to feed the growing Allied war effort. Fort Montburet is one of the last German strongholds outside Brest, but it is protected by Nazi minefields. For the Americans, to clear the mines in daylight could be fatal.
Big advantage of clearing mines at night is you're not going to be as visible to the Germans. So you will have that kind of concealment under darkness.
But the darkness makes their minesweeping more dangerous.
It also makes for a more confusing situation. It's easier to get lost. They're using these metal detectors, and of course the ground is just inundated with all this stuff. So at night, how are you really going to tell the difference? Metal is metal is metal down there, and you're going by feel and touch rather than sight.
Outside the fort's walls, Smith's men crawl forward in the dark. Some fan out into no man's land to ensure their work is not disrupted by German raiders. The others work in groups of 3, armed only with metal detectors, engineer's tape, explosives, and digging tools. While one sweeps, another marks off the safe path. The unlucky third probes.
The true work of mine clearing is done on your hands and knees, usually with a bayonet, not straight down, but a sloped angle, and very gently prodding and probing ahead.
As they work, they uncover 300-pound naval shells, buried as improvised mines by the Nazis, each capable of destroying a tank and killing its crew.
Yeah, the engineers are not going to try and defuse these mines at night because it's just way too dangerous. You have to be able to see what you're doing in order to be able to defuse them.
They rig each one with a pound of plastic explosive to detonate later.
That way, there's no chance they're going to be trying to defuse it under cover of darkness and it blows up in your face.
The cleared paths will allow the tanks to advance on the walls of the fort. The engineers creep back to their lines. Their night's work has already proved costly. German snipers located one man despite the darkness, and another is gravely wounded. Allied command believed German troop strength at Brest to be 10 to 20,000 men, and that the city would fall in a week. But the Allies have underestimated the Nazi defenses. They do not account for the German soldiers who retreated from the American advance and provided thousands of reinforcements. The troops assigned to Brest were also among the elite.
Nazi propaganda often portrays and calls the Fallschirmjäger as the youngest sons of the god of war. German paratroopers are generally well trained and well equipped and have got a high motivation.
Including Major General Hermann Bernhard Ramke, Commandant of Fortress Brest. Ramke has served in all three branches of the German armed forces and is himself a qualified paratrooper in the 2nd Fallschirmjäger Division.
He was also someone who was particularly dedicated to Nazism, someone who firmly believed in the Führer Adolf Hitler. Ramke issues an order saying that every single US soldier that is fighting against us here in Brest will not fight in Germany against our home country.
By the morning of September 14th, the 121st Engineers have uncovered 4 naval shells and rigged them for simultaneous detonation. But the explosions reveal a 5th naval shell in the tank's path, still intact. Private John Nelson races forward to place an explosive charge on the shell. Though struck by enemy fire, Nelson succeeds in setting the charge. Then scrambles back to safety. With a route cleared through the minefield, the craters will be filled in to create 2 paths, 50 yards apart and 8 yards wide. Major Tom Dallas of the 116th Infantry Regiment prepares to storm Fort Montbarret.
Major Tom Dallas, he was a soldier with a soldier's fighting heart. He had kind of ferocity about him and a single-mindedness in terms of destroying the Germans. He had an axe to grind against them because of the many soldiers under his command they had killed on D-Day.
It won't be easy. An 18th century French fort provides German forces with a formidable defensive position. Strong masonry walls are backed by a massive earthen embankment 40 feet thick. A moat 15 feet deep and 40 feet wide surrounds the fort.
You basically have these forts that are created to withstand almost any weapon that would have existed in the 18th century, and were still pretty applicable to the 20th century.
In addition to the existing structures, German troops have dug an anti-tank ditch and placed bunkers and pillboxes occupied by machine gun crews. It is just one of a series of forts that ring Brest to protect its port.
Plus, the forts are sited along every reasonable route of advance.
The Allies had already ruled out attack from the sea. This is supposed to be the easy way in.
Fort Montbarret is just a nut that you are going to have to crack.
In addition to Sidney Smith's engineers, Major Dallas also commands artillery, along with American and British tanks. Major Dallas orders a smokescreen to protect U.S. troops as they mobilize. Then sends the 116th C Company to attack German positions on the fort's right flank. Dallas must neutralize the Germans' forward defenses. If he fails, his advance will stall. September 14th, 1944. For 2 days, American forces have attacked Fort Montbarret, which guards the port city of Brest, without breaking through. Major Tom Dallas orders C Company of the 116th Infantry Regiment to clear the pillboxes and trenches on the right flank of the fort.
You've got to take these positions first as a kind of stepping stone to get physically near the fort.
In the smoky haze, the cratered landscape proves dangerous. The infantry moves in with grenades and bayonets.
C Company is in some very intense fighting. Grenade to grenade kind of fighting, rifle to rifle, bayonet fighting, which is exceedingly rare. When you see that in the reports of the time, it tells you that it's an extraordinarily traumatic kind of combat. What it meant was really intimate killing. So C Company has this mission, close with the enemy and destroy them at that close range.
But by late afternoon, C Company achieves its objective. And the Americans occupy the west side of the fort. Dallas can begin to move in his tanks. British Churchill Mark 7 tanks are known as Crocodiles. They are armed with a 75mm gun and turret-mounted machine guns. Each Crocodile tows an armored trailer which contains 400 gallons of petroleum fuel that enables the tank to shoot flames 80 yards in 121-second blasts.
Crocodile tank is a fearsome psychological weapon. Nobody wants to be burned to death. There are a lot of different kinds of death. That's probably the worst.
Major Dallas orders 3 Crocodiles to cross the minefield and approach the fort.
Because the Crocodile tanks are heavy, it's a, about 40-ton tank. They are fairly well suited to this sort of jagged, cratered terrain.
The lead Crocodile is under the command of British Lieutenant Hubert Anthony Ward. But as the second Crocodile cuts across the minefield, it sets off another undetected naval shell. The tank is immobilized. The explosion kills 1 man and badly wounds the 4 other tankers. Major Tom Dallas's troops rush in to deal with the wreckage. Worse still, it holds up the other tanks. They stand by to cross the minefield to provide covering fire. But their path is now blocked.
The remaining tanks are bottlenecked. Ward is basically up there, cut off on his own, and those 5 tanks are of really no use to him.
So American Captain Sidney Smith's combat engineers spring into action to clear a new path around the dead Crocodile.
These aren't just guys that build stuff, they're fighting engineers. These men have to maneuver, position charges, blow things up, and then continue to fight, and then in some cases hold things against all odds.
His men must now locate the mines in broad daylight. making them easy targets for German snipers. This setback is yet more proof that German troops intend to fight for every inch of ground. Now, nearly 3 weeks into their siege, the Americans still have not reached the city walls of Brest.
Nazi propaganda minister Joseph Goebbels makes a big story out of the defense of Brest. He portrays the German Fallschirmjäger and General Ramke as heroes fighting against all odds against the Americans. So, Brest is seen as something like the peak of the fighting in the fortresses in the West.
Fort Montparet itself is held by a unit of Fallschirmjägers, commanded by Oberleutnant Flütter.
The German paratroopers or Fallschirmjägers were an elite unit, battle-hardened. They had all the mental toughness, they had the best weapons, and they were going to fight to the death.
So, wir müssen, wenn alle die Männer hier, machen die Bunker hier. So.
Near the fort's walls, Ward's Crocodile tank remains a sitting duck, alone on the battlefield, vulnerable to one of the most feared Nazi weapons, the Panzerfaust.
The Panzerfaust is the leading individual soldier's anti-tank weapon of that time. In that kind of cratered landscape around Montparet, these guys could be hiding anywhere. If he's within 30 or 40 yards, he's got this thing at his side and he can fire it. A one-shot deal, and there's a very good chance that that thing is going to penetrate your armor and possibly lead to a catastrophic explosion.
Lieutenant Ward decides to take action. He targets the German defensive positions on the left flank. Dallas sends the 116th B Company forward to support the tank's charge.
The Panzerfaust is just one example of why combined arms become so important. The tankers don't often have the visibility to deal with them, and they're looking for the heavier weapons.
With clear lines of sight and maneuverability, the infantry are the best weapon against a Panzerfaust gunner. With bursts of flame, Ward starts to clear the German forces from the outlying pillboxes. Then adds both his guns to the hail of fire. The flames do much of the work. The defenders quickly surrender. B Company rounds up more than 70 German soldiers. Ward presses onward with guns and flames. He clears the tree line to the north and then east of Fort Montparet. Ward attacks so aggressively, he runs out of fuel for his flamethrower and shells and bullets for his guns. He has also outrun his support.
It's just Ward and his crew. He has no infantrymen with him. It's this lone tank, basically behind the German fort, deep in enemy country.
Now defenseless, Ward turns back towards his lines. He navigates the bomb-blasted, cratered area around the fort. But stops suddenly when his 40-ton tank slips sideways into a deep depression. His timing couldn't be worse. The tank comes to rest, facing a bunker of German soldiers.
Ward has been roaming around there firing off all these weapons. He definitely has an effect. he has demonstrated the exact right personality you want in someone who has that kind of weapon, that kind of tank, in that kind of situation. He's done precisely what you should do.
Initially surprised, the Germans may have been ready to surrender, but they quickly realized the tank is helpless. The tank's steep angle causes gasoline fumes to fill its interior. And worse, a fire extinguisher discharges and fills the tank with toxic gas. Ward's crew starts to suffocate. He seizes his pistol and pops the hatch. Lieutenant Ward does not plan to surrender. He begins a bold bluff and orders the Germans Hände hoch, or hands up. Not convinced by his pistol, the Germans don't move.
The Germans look at him and are kind of sizing it up, thinking of surrendering, but thinking, wait a minute, these guys look a little wobbly. This guy only has a pistol.
One of the tank crew passes Ward a loaded Bren gun. And he blasts out a series of warning shots. Remarkably, the Germans surrender.
It defies any kind of rational explanation that 39 guys are going to surrender to a guy with a pistol if the flames or these other weapons are not some kind of factor in that.
Despite Ward's success, the day's fighting has cost Major Tom Dallas 2 tanks, and his troops have yet to directly attack the walls of Fort Montbarret. Dallas hopes he can get some help from the 115th Infantry Regiment. They will maneuver to sever the fort's last lifeline by capturing the road from Fort Montbarret back to Brest. If the 115th succeeds, Oberleutnant Flöter will be cut off from supplies, reinforcement, and escape. Meanwhile, Dallas prepares for another assault on the fort itself. To do so, he must use the Crocodile tanks to full tactical and psychological advantage.
Dallas still thinks he's going to need the tanks. The engineers then have to make sure to create some sort of smooth surface.
Captain Sidney Smith and his 121st Engineers venture back onto the battlefield to fill in the moat and level out the approach to Fort Montbarret. They use everything at their disposal. From bulldozers to explosives, to picks and shovels to accomplish the task.
Captain Smith, he is the brains of this operation. If this were a peacetime civilian job, he would be the architect, he would be the foreman, the supervisor, all in one.
As they perform this work, Smith and his men must also detect mines and avoid enemy fire. Smith himself directs a bulldozer operator's work.
So here he is lying on the ground, under some level of cover, but certainly in danger. I think Captain Smith is a major player and character in this whole push toward Fort Montbarret. Without him, I don't know that it's going to proceed the same way.
U.S. riflemen provide coverage throughout the operation. Their protection is so complete, only one member of the engineers is struck by German counterfire. On September 16th, Major Dallas launches yet another assault on Fort Montbarret. Smith's engineers have done their job well. 3 Crocodile tanks advance across the approach. and open up at point-blank range. Each creates a wall of fire on the fort's north side. But with their fuel trailers empty, the flames burn out. The blaze has no impact on the stone. The thick walls continue to protect the defenders inside. Dallas will need another plan to deliver the flames right into Fort Montbarret. September 1944. American forces continue their siege to liberate the French port city of Brest. 3 flame-throwing Crocodile tanks fail to break through the walls of Fort Montbarret. American Major Tom Dallas must find a way to deliver the fire into the fort directly, to force the Nazi holdout to surrender. He realizes the easiest way through might be the main gate. Dallas orders an M10 tank destroyer to fire 50 rounds at the entrance. While surely shaking the walls to their foundations, the gate holds. 6 more Crocodile tanks expend their fuel, sending fire up the walls on the north and east sides of the fort. Though they push the Nazi troops back from the walls, the flames still have no effect on the structure.
Flame tanks at this point are not effective. You're asking them to do something they're not really designed to do, which is shoot jets of flame at very well fortified masonry. I don't think flames are going to overcome that.
Dallas tries his luck with a bigger gun against the main entrance. They position a 105mm howitzer armed with white phosphorus shells, just 20 meters from the gate. While white phosphorus was used for smoke screens, Dallas now uses it as an incendiary to set the fort on fire. They shoot off 150 rounds.
The shells are too small, the explosive charges are not strong enough, and you don't have the kind of penetration factor that you need. I mean, they're just going to bounce off those walls. So the shells are not at all effective.
The barrage devastates the inside of the fort, but Oberleutnant Flöter and his paratroopers remain entrenched.
Though the weapons are not always that effective for doing exactly what Dallas would hope, it is, I think, contributing to the kind of lowering of morale of the German garrison.
Meanwhile, Smith and his men locate a passageway which runs to a tunnel on the outside of the moat. The engineers determine that if the main gate cannot be breached, they might use the passage to bring down the walls to capture Fort Montbarret.
So when the Americans find the passageway, it now creates a new option for Dallas beyond just standing there and battering the gate.
An M10 tank destroyer is positioned. The impact blows a hole at the top of the passageway's masonry wall, just big enough for a man to crawl through. Before anyone could be sent in, 3 wounded German soldiers emerge carrying a white flag. Through a translator, they explain the constant shelling and flames were taking a toll on the defenders inside.
That the constant bombing has driven them crazy, so they are psychologically totally down. the artillery fire, the air bombardment have heavily impacted on their psyche.
Armed with this information, Major Dallas decides to offer Oberleutnant Flöter a chance to surrender. He uses an English-speaking German prisoner of war to deliver his message.
Dallas demands Flöter surrender by saying, if you don't surrender, you're going to get a lot worse than this.
Minutes later, Dallas receives Flöter's reply.
Flöter's response to Major Dallas's message is rather cheeky. Flöter says, if this is all you've got, we'll hold out for a little while.
The siege of Fort Montbarret will continue.
So it's kind of a taunt to the Americans, and Dallas is not the kind of guy you mess around with.
Major Dallas decides on a new approach. He orders 5 tons of TNT explosive. That much explosive is not available, but Dallas hopes 2 tons will bring down the wall, like a medieval castle siege. Dallas also has ladders at the ready to scale the wall, should the TNT's effects prove inadequate. But getting hundreds of pounds of dynamite into position proves difficult. Once again, Dallas calls on the 121st Engineers Company B, led by Captain Sidney Smith. With the Crocodile tanks and infantry providing covering fire, Smith's men move into the moat and unload the crates of dynamite.
Would have been enormously stressful and tense because you don't necessarily know what's going to happen from one minute to the next. For all you know, the Germans may be massing their people.
So before they begin work inside, they must secure their location. Smith's men enter the passageway. Fire their guns down its length. And lob in hand grenades. Satisfied it is clear, Company B works quickly to bring in the crates of explosives. When the last man emerges, Smith sends him back for a final sweep. With the all clear and the dynamite rigged for detonation, another German POW approaches Dallas and asks him to offer Flöter one more chance to surrender. Dallas brushes the POW's request aside.
Dallas hears these sort of vague allusions to the fact that perhaps the Germans may want to surrender, and he is in no mood to hear that. And so the explosion is going to go forward. I won't tell you what he actually said, but it was colorful.
Dallas orders his men to blow the TNT. But before the detonation, Dallas reconsiders his position. As the men work near the walls, they realize the body of 2nd Lieutenant Durwood Settles lies nearby. He had been killed in earlier fighting near the wall they hoped to bring down. Dallas is reluctant to blow the charges before the body can be recovered. The demolition would likely crush his remains, an idea which disturbs everyone. A lieutenant from the Graves Registration Unit volunteers to attempt recovery of Settles' body. Dallas agrees to the delay.
It's going to be better for your fighting morale, because you of course, inevitably, you're going to think, what if it were me? And no one wants to think about, you know, their remains getting exploded into atoms like that.
Lieutenant Kelton braves enemy fire to cross the moat. He retrieves the body and carries it out himself. At 5 p.m. on September 16th, Dallas finally gives the order to detonate the TNT. He can only hope that it is enough to finally conquer Fort Montbarret. September 16th, 1944. More than 3 months after D-Day, American forces try to bring down the walls of Fort Montbarret, a Nazi holdout guarding the deep water port of Brest. Major Tom Dallas hopes 2 tons of TNT will bring down the walls. The explosion succeeds and causes the collapse of the central section of the fort's north wall. Once more, the 121st Combat Engineers enter the fray. With British and American tanks providing covering fire. Captain Sidney Smith's B Company attacks the breach in the fort's wall and climbs over the rubble. It's a storm of artillery and machine gun fire. The onslaught is so intense that Smith's men do not realize the Germans are finally surrendering. When they catch on, they pound on the tanks' hulls to stop the barrage.
It's a chaotic moment. The 29th Division soldiers eventually have to take their rifle butts and pound on the tanks to get the attention of the tank crewmen so that they can tell them to stop firing. And it's not just a matter of humanity to the Germans, but also the fact that you've got American soldiers who are now within that fort and who might be in danger from the tank fire.
Dazed German soldiers pour out of the fort. As the 29th Division starts rounding up German prisoners above ground, Smith's men realize that some may be holding out in tunnels beneath the fort. As they creep down the passageway, they hear voices speaking German. The engineers fire their Tommy guns down the tunnel to announce their presence. 2 men surrender. The engineers have captured the garrison commander, Oberleutnant Flöter. Flutter is delivered to Major Tom Dallas and demands to be treated as an officer. But after 5 days of intense fighting, Dallas is not in a receptive mood. He roars that Flutter is a prisoner of war and to get his hands above his head. Dallas insists that Flutter return to the fort and identify all of the mines set by the Germans. With Fort Montbarret finally in Allied hands, the 29th Division is ready for the final assault on the city. 2 days later, on September 18, 1944, the 29th, along with 2 other divisions of the U.S. 8th Army Corps, take Brest and its port. Major General Ramke is captured a day later, having fled across the harbor by boat. Captain Sidney Smith's daring leadership at Fort Montbarret earns him a Silver Star. The Silver Star would also be awarded to Private John Nelson, who single-handedly wired up one of the naval shells in broad daylight. British Lieutenant Tony Ward's exceptional courage in the lead Crocodile tank merited a Silver Star as well, a significant tribute to a member of a foreign army. During the Siege of Brest, the 29th Division suffers over 3,300 casualties, including nearly 700 men killed. The American 8th Army Corps captures nearly 40,000 German POWs at Brest, twice the number of defenders estimated by Allied command. But throughout the 27-day siege, Ramke's troops sabotaged the port so thoroughly that no Allied ships would dock there for the remainder of the war. By late September 1944, the Allies pushed the Western Front towards Germany to capture Berlin as soon as possible. But in the coming weeks, Nazi resistance would stiffen and the war in Europe will continue for another 8 months.